Hello, everybody. This is Renee from Renee Talks. Today I have with me Dr. Monica Debro. She's a survivor of domestic violence, and she's here to provide some insights to someone that may be going through that and to share her story. How you doing, Dr. Monica?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming and agreeing to interview with me.
You're very welcome.
All right, so I guess we're just going to get into it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to share your story and tell us what happened.
So again, thank you so much for offering me this opportunity to share my story. As you said, my name is Dr. Monica Debro. I am the owner of Love Yourself to Life, where I encourage women to embrace the essence of who they are and not allow their past to interfere with their future. And my story involves me allowing my past of domestic violence to hold me hostage, thinking that I wasn't good enough, believing what my abusers were telling me about, that, no one would ever want me. Before me, there was none. After me, there'll be none. So, and just giving in to the abuse, the mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, emotional abuse, and physical abuse. And I like to preface this with, although I have been in domestic violence relationships, my current communication with, which I only communicate with one, is very cordial. So I hold no grudges. I have gone through the forgiveness process. We've all grown. And so anything that's said, it's not in retaliation of them or anything, because again, we have healed, we have moved forward, we're in a good place, and I'm good, and he's good, so I can't complain about that. But my abuse started when I was 18. I thought I was grown. I put my big girl panties on, moved out of my sister's house, and moved in with, at that time, my boyfriend at that time. And shortly after that, the abuse started. So I've been in several abusive relationships. So at 18 is when I started experiencing my first episodes of abuse. I've been beaten with a whip, the kind of whip that you see cattlemen or horsemen keeping their cattle in line with. I've been beaten with one of those. I've been shot at, stabbed. I have an iron mark on my left leg from one of my abusers. So, and it's just thankful that I am where I am now. I've run for my freedom with nothing but my underwear on, and hid behind a bush until I could get someone to allow me to use their cell phone to call a friend. Now, you would think after that episode and that relationship that I would have left, but I didn't. I went right back 2 days later. And that's the thing with being in a domestic violence relationship, is a lot of times, Renee, we leave, but we go back. And the research shows that we leave 7 times. It takes us 7 times of leaving before we actually leave the relationship for good. And that's one of the things that people who are not in the relationship, who may be watching from the outside in, that's something that they may not understand, is the hold that the person has on you in the relationship, and that it takes time and a cycle for a victim to actually leave a relationship.
Did you see any signs? Were there any warning signs?
In none of my relationships that I was in that were abusive, there were no warning signs. When you first start dating somebody, what do? You get that honeymoon phase, everything's all good. You get the flowers, you get the whining, the dining. Although at 18, there was no whining and dining. It was Kentucky Fried Chicken and pizza. Let's be real with it. At that age, there's no whining and dining. But you get all the nice part. you get the imitation of the person. And then for whatever reason, it starts. They snap. Something didn't go well at work, and they take it out on the person that they claim to love. You don't come home on time, you're 10 or 15 minutes late, and there's rage with that. So different reasons. And then sometimes no matter what the victim does, the abuser still finds a reason to abuse. The water that they brought them may not be cold enough, and then they get abused. In the relationship where I was not physically abused, but I was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially abused, I still don't think he sees it as abuse. I think he sees it as just doing what he thought he was called to do. So I still don't think he sees that. But once I came to myself and thought about it, and I realized I'm not being emotionally taken care of in this relationship. I'm working 3 jobs. You're not working any jobs. I'm trying to keep us afloat. I'm suffocating in a marriage. And then at the same time, in a marriage and yet still feel alone. And that's tough as well when you're in a relationship that's supposed to be building, but yet you still feel alone. You still feel uncared for. You hear that saying, the man wears the pants in the house. Well, they can wear the pants, but in my case, I'll just speak for myself. In my case, I was doing all the work. You know, going to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, coming back at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night from working 2 jobs, and can't even get a hot dog to eat. So, and I don't even like hot dogs, but you know, I'll take it if that's what's available for me when I get home. So, you know, and I don't think that in that relationship, he saw that as abuse. I think he just saw it as him working on his calling. But yet you can't take care of people outside the home if you're not taking care of people in your home.
Right, right. So was it as hard to leave the emotionally abusive relationship as it was the physically abusive relationship?
No. At some point, I had gotten completely broken. In the emotionally abusive relationships, now all of them were emotionally abusive, except the first 2 had the physical component to it. Because you can't be in a physically abusive relationship and remain healthy emotionally. So I'm assuming you're referring to the one that didn't have any physical abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That one, when I finally was completely broken and in a dark place, and then broken again, it wasn't hard for me to leave. I had to separate myself from the organization in order to completely separate myself from him. In that relationship, I will say it was, out of all 3 abusive relationships I was in, that's the only one that I attempted suicide. And I can say that's the one that I was broken the most. And that may seem strange for some people to hear, that you were in a physically abusive relationship where you were beaten down, had black eyes, broken nose. I had a miscarriage as a result of one of the beatings, but you weren't as broken in that one as you were in the one where you were not physically abused. Absolutely. I was completely broken. Talk about wearing a mask. I was the prize winner of wearing a mask at that time, because I was crushed on the inside, but I couldn't let that show on the outside because I was a pastor's wife. So I had to make sure that I was taking care of everything else and making sure he looked good out in the community. And it was breaking me inside. It was slowly breaking me inside. And I remember the night that I attempted suicide. You would have thought that, so when I attempted suicide, I was teaching at a university. I was teaching a class on health and wellness and teaching them about the importance of being mentally, emotionally, healthy, strong, all these areas that I was so weak in. And I remember thinking, I'll be glad when this class is over so that I can end my life and I can be done. The night that class ended, I remember walking through the parking lot and it being dark in the parking lot with only a flicker of light coming from the lights that were outside. That's exactly how I felt. I felt completely dark with just a small amount of light trying to hold me together. But yet that didn't stop me. I still was determined to end my life that night. I was determined to not wake up the next day. I was determined not to make it home that night because I'd taken some sleeping pills, gotten in the car, and I started driving with the all plan of crashing and dying. Now, Renee, you would think, you're a nurse, you should know better. Did you think about the people who were driving on the freeway with you that you could have caused harm to after you did this? I didn't. When you're in that much of a broken state, you don't think about the harm that you can cause other people when you're ready to take your own life. But I will tell you, I'm very thankful that God saved me. I'm very thankful that I did make it home that night without causing harm to myself or anybody else on the freeway that night. And I remember the moment when these pills were not taking place. Typically, when I take a sleeping pill, I'm good. 30 minutes later, 10, 15 minutes later, I'm knocked out. These pills were not taking effect. And I took more than what I should have taken. They were not taking effect. So you would have thought, Renee, that I would have had the insight to say, okay, this isn't working, Lord. What is your plan for me? But that wasn't the case. In my messed up mind, my thought was, okay, this isn't working. What's plan B? I concocted plan B. When I get home, I'm going to pull into the garage, let the garage door down, leave the car running, and just go to sleep. Renee, I remember everything about that drive. I remember pulling in my neighborhood, remember turning on the street that I live in, but guess what I do not remember? Pulling into my driveway and into my garage. I do not remember that. It was nothing but God that saved me. I remember the next thing I remember is my ex-husband waking me up on the steps, asking me what was I doing sleeping on the steps. I didn't even make it upstairs. I literally made it in my house to turn the corner and walk halfway up the steps and was asleep. You cannot tell me that was not God. And when he woke me up, I still had my purse on my arm, my work bag on my arm, and this big, thick notebook in my arm with all of my notes for class. And he broke me even more when a couple of days later, I told him that I had attempted suicide. And his response was, "You're always talking about suicide. What do you want me to do?" Now, this is a man that I saw praying over people all the time, teaching the word of God. But yet, as his wife, I could not get a simple prayer from him in my darkest moments. So it's in those moments that I continue to be broken. And at some point, I was tired of being broken. And I remember telling one of the ladies from a church, I said, I should just write a book called Broken Believer. And I remember sitting on her couch, just the tears just falling. And you know how you have a thought, Renee, and it just come and go, you just think you're talking? Well, about a year later, I was still broken. And God said, no more. And I was like, what do you mean no more? He was like, you're a broken believer, no more. And the thing that started my healing process was me starting to write about my story. My story from being broken and being hurt to allowing God to heal me. And through that writing process of writing Broken Believer No More, God continued to heal me. And by the time I was finished, the mask was off, the pretending was done, I was free, I felt lighter, and I just felt that I was going to be able to help others heal and go through moments of insecurity, moments of hurt, moments of pain.